Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome and welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. This is part 2 of a COrVID video that I did recently. I was asked to go into a little bit more detail about my experience, and so I want to just share that I already did a video about this and then I decided to delete it because it felt very incomplete. I hadn't gone into enough details, so hopefully this one will be a little bit more complete with what I'm trying to share. So if you haven't watched the video that I did called Raw Emotions, I did that video while I was under the weather with my entity friend that I'm calling COrVID. As a little background, in case you haven't seen that video, I'm calling it COrVID because when I was beginning to receive messages about I guess we could call it the entity that's affecting all of our lives, it wasn't a thing yet. Nobody knew what it was. Well, I'm sure some people did, but we didn't. And I thought that my guidance team was just trying to bring me into awareness about COrVID, the crow and raven family. Because if you guys have seen my videos before, I'm really into the indigenous teachings and animal totems and medicine cards and just working with all of our environment to essentially read and get readings on synchronicities and to work together in intuitive ways. So I was under the impression that something magical was about to happen. And shape-shifting. So those are the two key words that were coming through. The shape-shifting is how can you fit into your environment, becoming part of your environment, and roll with the punches from one perspective. Something is about to shift your reality. How can you shift with it in the most graceful of ways and be that observer and witness? So that was one of the messages. And the other was, and still find magic as this is going on. There's a lot of magical things that are about to be unfolding. Now, I still believe strongly that that was part of the message because the COrVID and the COVID, you guys know I play with the words a lot. So it's a very similar word, right? But so there's double meanings, triple meanings, layered meanings, oftentimes when we get intuitive messages. I just didn't know that there was something else that was also part of this. Fast forward. My intention with sharing this video is just to share my experience and connection to the entity and how I processed it in my own being, in my own body. So this is based on my own unique individual experience and expression from my perspective. Everybody else has their own perspective. Also everything, and that's valuable to them. This is valuable to me, and I'm hoping that somebody out there listening or watching may find it helpful in some way. Or it might just help curb some curiosity around this particular entity. I want to share, first of all, as a disclaimer, right? Everything I'm about to share is not medical advice. I would never give medical advice. Again, it's based on my own experience and what's worked for me and approximately the 15 people that were all affected by this simultaneously. So I'm going to share firsthand experience and also, connecting with these individuals. That's it. I'm not sharing from other people's websites or what they went through. This is all connected to me. I'm going to start off by sharing the magical part of it because that's really what I wanted to talk about, and then I'll get to the details later. When I let go of the resistance, so there were layers of this. I will share first of all that I'm comparing it a little bit to when I had an awakening 4 years ago. I became very sick. I was processing a lot of cellular memories. I was receiving downloads and activations, and everything happened all at once. And I have a tendency, my friend Candace and I call it, to eat the shadow. We're shadow eaters. So all of that shadow that was coming up, I was like Pac-Man. Chomp, 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 you know, integrate, digest, compost, integrate, digest, compost. And it was a very physical experience for me. For whatever reason, I've chosen in this lifetime to experience things in a very physical way. Maybe because I'm a human having a physical experience on Earth, with Earth. So this experience with COrVID was no different in that regard. It felt like a massive download. It felt like a massive purging, and it brought up any emotions and memories within my cellular being that hadn't been purged, integrated, processed. Things I didn't even realize were embedded within my cellular memory. And my friend Kat kind of pointed this out, like, I'm having all these memories. I'm like, yeah, me too. Simultaneously, today is the 4th, I believe. Yeah, today's the 5th. It's funny, when I recorded this the other day, it was 2244. I just looked at the clock, it's 1155. Anyways, what happened was, as I was I call it being in it. Once I worked through, and I'm going to start there and then go backwards. Once I realized I was in it and I let go of the resistance, that's when the real work began from my perspective. Because once I came out of denial about having this, once I came into, I stopped pushing it away. I stopped saying, get out of my body, you're not welcome. It's in. It's part of us once we have it. And it is what it is. So once I came out of that, it became more of a relationship. So the way that it looked to me energetically, that's where I'm going to start, is it looked like a giant hairy shadow. Like a ball with all the little hairs. And that's kind of what it looks like, right? When you look at it under a microscope. And I saw it as that. And what I did was I kind of saw it like radiating from here, in the lungs and in the chest, around the heart area. And then it would look like, in my mind's eye, almost like it would send out little pieces of itself throughout the body. Like a recon mission, which is ironic because I was just using that word. It would send out this reconnaissance, and it would be like, I'm going to go check out this part of the body. It never felt like it was right in the back of my shoulders and in my chest the whole time. That was the mothership. But from there, it would move through the body, and as it moved through my body, it was like rolling waves of unpleasantness, nerve endings, right? Pretty much any of the symptoms that are listed, I had. And I'm going to talk about that later because some people, they don't experience this at all. I, in my energetic knowingness, chose to experience it in this way. The reason that I feel I chose to experience it in this way was not only so I could share it with others, but when we work on ourselves and we process something, whatever that entity is that we're processing and working with, we're also processing for the collective. So it's our own individual unique experience, but everything is a fractal, right? It's piece of a piece of a piece of a piece. So my experience with this entity changes this entity's experience with the human. That's it in a nutshell, energetically, from what I can see from my own intuitive perspective. Therefore, when I created a conversation with this entity and I acknowledged it as being alive, and I'll get to that in just a moment, it shifted I'm getting emotional. My entire perspective about it. And it shifted its relationship with my body. So, as I visualized it going into the different areas and fields of my body, what it looked like was, let's say a little black shadow going in and just checking it all out. Just checking it out. It would go in and check out my joints. It would go in and check out my fascia. It would go in and check out my stomach. It checked out my head. It checked out my eyes. And every time it would go into any of these body parts, my body would light up and say, I see you. And my body was creating a program, rewriting a program on how to interact with this entity in that moment. And as it did that, my nerves, right, everything would respond and light up to shine light on this shadow that was curiously looking at every space within the body, within the skin suit. That's what it looked like to me inside when I went in with my third eye. Inner vision, whatever we want to call it. Intuition. I went in to intuit what was happening. So once I kind of came into that space of, all right, I'm hosting, I'm a host. So I'm going to give it a tour. I'm going to be the tour guide. And every time it would go into a certain area, I would acknowledge, okay, it's in my joints right now. And I would kind of help out by sending this golden light or green light kind of from my heart space. And I would visualize it moving almost like a fog or a waterfall or an electrical pulse. Originally, I would pulse it to kind of shock it and stop it. But then I was like, it's not working. So let's just play with it. Play would be a very different way of describing how it felt. It wasn't very playful, but it kind of was. This is the crazy thing about it. So it felt very synthetic. When I was younger, I was sick a lot. I had earaches and stomach problems and asthma and all kinds of stuff in my high school and grade school years. So I'm very well aware of what it feels like to be sick, but I did have that question. I haven't been sick in a really long time. Am I hyping this up? Am I hypersensitive and hyper aware because of what I do for my career, healer and work with the body and intuitive and all this stuff? Is it just heightened because of that? Or is it heightened because I don't get sick very often? And no, it was just my body. That's how it was experiencing this. And so it moved into everything. It left no rock unturned. And literally that's what it felt like as well, because my sister said as well, oh my gosh, this is so weird, but all of my problem areas are really hurting right now. She has plantar fasciitis, that was bothering her, like her elbow was bothering her. It was all the places. And I felt like this entity would go in and be like, what's going on down here? And just check it out. And the body was rewriting this system in order to counter it, understand it, integrate it, and come back to a working order where it wasn't, at first it felt like it was attacking itself. It felt like my body was attacking me. But as I moved through this and allowed the rolling waves to move through me, it felt like less of an attack and more of an upgrade. If you've never had ascension symptoms or been really sick as your body's been processing and upgrading, it's kind of hard to explain, but it feels like everything is breaking down to rebuild itself again. And that's essentially what it felt like. As it breaks down, bubbles are popped. So as things are broken down, or as that light shines on the entity, it shines light on a lot of the shadows, on old injuries, old concepts, old people in my life that I hadn't thought about in years. Friendships, relationships, teachers. I mean, just poo, 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 poo. Okay. Once I connected with this entity, I was having difficulty sleeping. So I would try, every time I was awake, I would just go into my body. Have you guys ever seen that movie? Like, it's an old movie with Dennis Quaid, and he's like a spaceship, and he sinks in, and that's kind of what I was doing, and visualizing what I was doing. That's kind of what it looked like, right? So I'll share a video that is the isolated sound and vibration of the protein that my friend Annette sent to me. I'll share that link on the description. I'm going to share a list of things that I did that helped me on a linear basis. I did do some energy work on myself, of course, as well as my mother and my sister. So that is something else. I know more will come up from this, but I'm just going to share. So tapping. I did a lot of tapping around the collarbones, around the shoulders. Of course, I did the energy work where I was guided to do certain motions and movements. I just went with what felt right. Soft belly rubs, circular motions. I just was guided to work energetically with. And as I did this, I asked to integrate, clear, dissolve, merge, and just work with the emotional body, the physical body, all bodies, right? The nesting doll that we are. I was guided to do a lot of forward folds because as I did forward folds, it opened up my back. So child's pose, seated cross-legged with one leg in front of the other, fold forward, maybe do some twists, switch legs, do it again. I was guided to do legs up the wall. So my legs went straight up the wall while my back was flat on the ground to kind of get the circulation shifted a little bit. I did a lot of ujai breathing. Again, this is not a medical, don't do this in place of going to see a doctor if you feel like you need to, but ujai breathing, you're narrowing the breath as you breathe in. My husband. Narrowing the breath as you breathe out. Okay, so it's a long inhale 5 counts and long exhale 5 counts. That's basically what I worked on when I was having difficulty breathing. It helped to relax the nervous system because there is a sense of fight or flight with this. The more relaxing that you can do, the better. When I asked what it wanted to do, and basically this energy just wanted to live. So this synthetic energy became part of my organic body. So it was this merge and relationship that I created around this particular being. And it's not necessarily going to live forever within us, but it's experiencing life through us. Is essentially what I was understanding. Where the reason that it was created is irrelevant when it comes to that because it's a living being now. And so when we integrate it as part of our living system, it then can be processed and broken down more thoroughly, is what I was told. Whenever I connect with something that is synthetic or artificial, oftentimes the answer that I get is it wants to live. Again, it doesn't mean that it necessarily wants to live forever. It just wants to be alive. And in that moment, it becomes this seek life. Seek, right? Seek and you shall find. It is, from my perspective, seeking all areas to see it and feel it and connect with it. So that would be the magic, I guess, of it. By the way, it is not. I have family, by the way. I'm not making light of this. I have family and loved ones who have lost family and loved ones. So I have, my cousin lost her dad recently to it. My best friend lost her dad recently to it. So I am not making light of this being some magical entity. It's the real deal. All I'm trying to do is present one of the ways that I viewed it, experienced it, and integrated it. So other light workers or healers, other humans having this experience might be able to benefit from it as well. And I want to go back into this. When we work on ourselves, we are doing work for the collective, period. It's all connected. Last but not least, I'll include that list of things that you might find helpful. We had a group of about 15 people approximately, some which had taken precautions against getting this from one perspective, others who had not taken precautions against getting this, both got sick. So everybody got sick. The only people that didn't were the ones who had already previously had it. So one person had it about a year ago, another person had it about 3 months ago, and there were 2 other people, I think, that didn't catch it, that all had it in a previous time frame. Everybody else got it. The difference is the people that took the precaution against getting it from one perspective, they had it for approximately 2 days less, 2 to 3 days less than everybody else who didn't take precautions against it. They still had the same extreme symptoms, and it wasn't pleasant, but they got through it a little bit faster. What else? Indirectly, my sister's best friend, actually, they were not so lucky. They had both parents who had taken precautions against it were sick about the same amount of time as we were. So everybody's different. Everybody's body responds differently to this. From what I saw firsthand, the people who had the worst symptoms were those that had asthma, such as my mother and a dear friend of ours, who also wasn't the healthiest of the group. Okay. Epsom salt baths, breathing, ujai breathing, grounding, vitamins, Boost and Ensure shakes. I'm not trying to name a brand. I'm just sharing that's what worked for my mother. We did go out of desperation because we were desperate. We did go and get my mother the monoclonal antibody. And I wanted to share that because within 24 hours, she went from not being able to really get up and walk around to fully getting up, walking around, and being able to eat regular food. So the change that I saw was massive in a 24-hour period. Again, this is not in place of medical. It's just something to recognize as an option. I asked the nurse who took care of us at the monoclonal antibody unit if people that had taken precautions and people that hadn't taken precautions are both getting this treatment. And she said yes. They had been seeing both ends of the spectrum and they were treating everybody, basically. So that was interesting for me and just informative. What else? Also, just look it up online. I took the anti-parasitic medication because I've had heavy metals and parasites in the past, and I felt like that was necessary for my body. My sister did nothing but vitamins. We healed about the same time frame. So again, every body is different. Water, 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 water. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Alkaline, alkaline, alkaline. There's much more, but I'm going to end on that note. I'm going to provide the links in the description in case you guys are interested in some of the things that I've discovered. And I am just in extreme gratitude to everyone for living in this now moment with each other and experiencing what everybody is experiencing right now. And there's so much going on in the world. This is just one part of it. So I honor you in love and light. Namaste.